Good evening, Western Standard viewers, and welcome to HANNAFORD, a weekly politics show. It is Thursday, February the 19th. Our guest tonight is Erika Barootes. Our subject, whether Ottawa intentionally sets up Alberta to fail for readily observable partisan goals. Ms. Barootes is no stranger to the program. She is the department head of Applied Politics and Public Affairs at Macquarie College. An Alberta senator-elect, the founding president of the United Conservative Party, and I think it's fair to say that when you call the Premier's office, you get a call back, right?
I would sure hope so.
Erika, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Tonight, we're exploring a crazy, wild-eyed proposition that makes everything that makes life hard in Alberta starts in Ottawa. Three things. One, there's the pipeline upon which so many revenue hopes are riding, but which, because of Ottawa's demand for green conditions, may never get built. Secondly, there's the impossible Ottawa demand that by 2050, Alberta must have a net neutral energy grid. Impossible because of the third thing, population growth driven by Ottawa. It was challenging enough when there were 3 million Albertans, which is what the population here was only 5 years ago, in July 2000. Check it out with Statistics Canada. Now there are more than 5 million people living here. That's the insane population growth that Premier Smith is talking about now, and it's not slowing down. You see the effects in schools, in the health services. You might even see it soon with energy security, providing power for an extra 2 million people in 5 years. When you're looking at 10 years to get approvals to even start building something is incredible. So we're going to talk about that. And meanwhile, we have a globalist prime minister who wants to cut ties with America, Alberta's biggest customer. He's a proponent of global financial cooperation, climate-focused finance reform. Economically, he's a Keynesian and has no problem borrowing money, and he's a liberal. And Alberta is almost 100% conservative. I think we've got plenty to talk about. But Erika, before we get into that, Matt Jeneroux crossed the floor yesterday. Now, I think you've got some history with Mr. Jeneroux, do you not?
I do. So I'm not going to call it crossing the floor. I'm going to call it unresigning his resigned seat that he talked about in November. So he was not only crossing a floor to the Liberals, a party that has never been elected in Edmonton Riverbend, but also that he undid his resignation that he put out in November, stating that he wanted to spend and focus more time on his family. Maybe his family was like, nah, we're good. You just go back. And then he decided, you know, what else could I do as a dumpster fire? Oh, I'll just cross to the Liberals. So my history with him is actually Matt Jeneroux, his wife and I actually all worked together at the legislature in, I think, 2011. He then ran as an MLA for part of the riding in which he now represents as an MP. Under the Progressive Conservative Party, he's been a attendee or supporter of the UCP during my time as president, and then has been a member of Parliament for the Conservative Party of Canada. So I've known Matt for a long time. The sad thing is, am I surprised he would do something like this? And the answer is no. But I generally just feel very bad for his constituents because this is not what they elected him to do. And he is just, fanboying over Mark Carney and hoping for a better role than he was going to have in Pierre's government.
Well, that's
that's all my feelings there. So yeah, I did work with him. I'm not surprised that he did this, which is also a sad thing to say.
Now, okay, we were pretty hard on him yesterday here at the Western Standard, or maybe I was, but at any rate,
you should be.
You should be. Really, why should we be hard on him?
I think this is, one, I wish that if someone wanted to cross the floor, they've got to sit in as an independent or a by-election is struck. He alluded to having a by-election and to stepping down in 2 months from now and then retracted that because he got a maybe shiny new offer. Or perhaps he thought that maybe his skeletons weren't going to come out of the closet and it was safe to cross the floor now versus November. Who knows? But I do think it's just a very sad thing for democracy. It's a very sad thing for the people of Edmonton. Riverbend, there was interest by both the Liberals and the Conservatives to have a true by-election, which Matt committed to, and then revoked when he felt it was opportunistic for him to do so.
You just used the magic word skeletons. Come on, you can't just leave us hanging.
Well, I'm not getting into that. That's not my story to tell. But I just think everyone has skeletons, and I think that there was, some apprehension that Matt Jeneroux didn't cross the floor under in November, and now why did that change? Either, his family was like, he doesn't even live here anymore. His family lives in Vancouver or in BC, so I don't know how he's going to be an MP here. But
I guess that's not totally a skeleton, but that is interesting. Look,
well, I'm not giving hot goss here. I mean, people can go look into it if they want.
Exactly. But do you think he actually ever was what we would call a real conservative in the Harper style or the Poilievre style?
I don't know. I think that he has been maybe more of a progressive conservative, but he did run under many different leaders. He ran under Pierre. So, I find his comments that this isn't a leader I was hoping for when he's known Pierre his entire political history. Pierre has been consistent with who he is. So I think it's just a cop-out to say that you no longer support the direction of the leader. I think it was more what's in Matt Jeneroux's best interest versus what is in the best interest of his constituents and Albertans. And unfortunately, I think that I can believe by his character, but because, I was a staffer with him. I remember doing some cabinet tours with him and his wife, planning that back in the day. And he then ran. And I think I thought he was actually a pretty good MLA under the Progressive Conservatives. Has he done a lot for Edmonton Riverbend? I mean, that's up to them. They did reelect him, but they reelected him under a very different situation than I think what they're getting now.
Okay, well, I guess we'll leave Mr. Jeneroux to pay taxes in British Columbia on his family home at least, and move right. Yeah. Better off here, notwithstanding the troubles we have, and it's the troubles we have in Alberta, Erika, that we really want to turn our attention now. So you heard the preamble. There's all these things that seem to be stacked up, making it hard for Alberta to do what Alberta wants to do under the leadership of Premier Smith. I'm not sure that it makes that much difference who is Premier of Alberta. It didn't seem to do so when it was Rachel Notley in power, the Liberal government. And I'm calling it the Liberal government, including the Trudeau years, because there's been a consistency of approach, especially as regards Alberta, under the new management. It just seems to be set up to make it difficult for us to succeed, more likely to fail. So do you think the Liberals are, in fact, intentionally setting Alberta up to fail, ramping up our costs by higher immigration?
That's a good question, I would say.
Well, let's just
go ahead. Sorry.
There's this too. As they do that, they simultaneously make it harder for us to make money. I mean, through our main industry, oil, to pay those costs. And is it all a plot to just make it easier to elect Liberals here in Alberta? What do you think?
So I think it's a good question to ask, because I would say under Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, the wanting to punish Alberta or introduce policies that have malicious intent against Alberta and Western Canada is definitely, I would say it was definitely proactive in order to do that. Under Mark Carney, I don't know if it's just lack of policy and politics by him that is trying to do one step forward that equals two steps back. I mean, he's had no problem kind of poo-pooing his own party's previous policies on some level and wanting to maybe make it appear that he wants to play ball with Alberta or with Western Canada. but it almost is like in spirit or in symbolism rather than actual tangible things. So I think he's in a place where he's going to have to, do the business or get off the pot, and pick a lane on, is he going to give Alberta and Canada's um, like economy what it can do to thrive? Or is he just giving a bunch of falsehoods? I don't think he's doing it maliciously in the same way his predecessor did, but I do think there's some poor policies that if he's truly serious about this, he's going to have to use his constitutional power to make this happen, including access to Tidewater. And it doesn't appear to me that he's wanting to do it. He's wanting to say the right things, but not do the hard work.
Okay, well, that's one way of looking at it. All right. You did say that he was not doing it maliciously, but it's possible to do it intentionally, but without malice. Let me just expand on that a moment. What we have here is a prime minister who is still holds on to ideas that were fashionable 10, 20, even 50 years ago. He is, for instance, a Keynesian. He believes that the idea is if your economy is under functioning, then you borrow money, and they talk about priming the pump. So he believes in that approach. He is also a committed to the green philosophy. That has not changed. He laid it out in his book Values. And although he says, well, yes, we can do the pipelines, they have to contain decarbonized oil, which is oil for which there has been a compensating amount of carbon dioxide buried in the ground. They literally pump it underground. So that's not a good business model. It's extremely costly to do that, and oil is not so expensive that the producers can absorb that cost. So really saying, well, you can do it, but you've got to do it with one hand tied behind your back, and then, of course, other people are going to have a competitive advantage, and you're not going to be able to sell any. So he makes it sound as if he's all for development, but actually it has to be done in such a way that it's unprofitable, and therefore he's not in favor of development. Meanwhile, you pile people in. Let's face it, this is a federal policy that's driving immigration here, and I know the Premier is talking about it right now. So if you expand the population that much, don't let them make money. You've got a Prime Minister who's actively working against you. And you're saying he's, just am I misunderstanding the man here?
No, I think that's a good point on intent versus malice. And I would say, I feel like he's not giving a to our face FU to Alberta like Justin Trudeau did, but he might be actually then worse based on what you're saying, is that he's doing it, when we turn around, and he's doing it behind our backs. And so I hope that's not the case, but I'm seeing that even you saw this MOU, which I felt was a good symbolic, not, all the tactics and rollout or true progress of moving the needle. I saw the MOU as a great first step, but what we've seen now is actually kind of a pivot in some of his economic or energy policies. I mean, he just got back from China, where he's now agreed to significant EV investment. And we've seen then, like, what does that mean? Does he think that can replace part of the energy mandate that he's been talking about? And I fear that that's the case, that they're going to invest more in the production of EVs and the use of lithium, which we have in Alberta, over the oil and gas sector. And so I think he's a little bit sneakier, maybe. And I don't know if it's ignorance or corporate strategy that he's used in the past, but it does look like he says more of the things that Alberta wants to hear, but is actually doing as little as Justin Trudeau to move that needle. Example, I mean, he said that they would provide consent, not just consultation, to the First Nation coastal tribes that are standing in the way of a new pipeline. They're looking at, trying to pivot away and look at focus down here where the TMX is, as opposed to up north where we already have other pipelines that are not oil and gas that we could run along the line. So it seems like he's over promising and under delivering, where Justin Trudeau's commitment was just like, I don't like you and I don't care. And I don't know which is worse for Alberta.
Well, I guess I would argue that Mr. Carney's pose is a little worse because he is personable. He comes across well. He seems, as Mr. Trudeau seemed like a teenager who'd stolen the keys of the Ferrari and was doing damage. Mr. Carney does seem like the adult in the room. Can't believe I'm saying this, but he does, you see. But when you are the adult in the room and you lean forward and assure people that we're doing the right thing, there's a tendency for them to believe it, where it was very easy under Mr. Trudeau to realize what the problem was, and it wasn't us, it was him. So now you mentioned the the immigration thing is really makes it incredibly difficult. We were supposed to have a net neutral grid by 2035. That was Mr. Trudeau's plan. We said it was impossible, which it was, and it probably helped our argument that we had some very cold days when we began to on the very edge of brownouts. Well, that's when there were 3 million people in Alberta. Now there are 5 million, and although they've been working on building new capacity, they haven't built the new capacity for an extra 2 million people. That takes time. They're working on it. It will happen. But what's the population going to be by then? You keep piling people in. So, we constantly have these weights on our ankles as we try to go jogging. And it is incredibly hard for the government of Alberta. It's incredibly hard for Danielle Smith, but it could be the same whoever the premier was. You keep getting more piled on you as you're trying to catch up. Now, Mr. Carney has a way of expressing the challenge, which makes you think that perhaps it's all perfectly reasonable and just one of those things. But he has the power to stop it. He can reduce the immigration. He can, given the challenges that it presents in Alberta, he can forward more money to Alberta. Or he can simply change the rules so that Alberta itself can make more money. But I don't see him doing any of those things. So to your point, perhaps he's the more dangerous character than Mr. Trudeau.
And the more I see Mark Carney, the more I feel that way. I wanted to give him a lot of grace in the first several months. He's approaching a year. His training wheels can no longer be used as an excuse, because I do think he's more strategic. And I think that he's now, like I said, over-promising, under-delivering. To immigration, he acknowledged the problem that I think Justin Trudeau wasn't willing to acknowledge, that we do have basically an open-door immigration policy that needs to be reformed. But when you look at the immigration website under the Government of Canada, their targets that they set for themselves under Mark Carney are being destroyed in Q1 or Q2. Like, they're already surpassed what they're saying their levels are. And so it's one thing to say we're going to fix this problem and then really do nothing about it when you have stated you acknowledge the problem and that reform is required. But they're exceeding these numbers. It doesn't seem like they're slowing anything down. I would say Alberta can be a proof point that, 250,000, almost 300,000 new individuals in a year means that since Mark Carney took office and right before at the end of Prime Minister Trudeau's tenure, that they weren't doing anything to fix it. And we were seeing a flood of the individuals that were here having their family members come over and getting quickly processed because there was someone here to vouch for them. And to me, that's even more concerning as the one, quick process, and two, the speed in which that number can grow so quickly because one person has a family and they're bringing them over, and that can go from one individual here to 10 with no safeguards, no guarantee of employment. I think that's the other challenge, where a lot of individuals that want to come here want to be able to contribute to the economy, but at this volume and at this lax of policy, we're actually getting people that are using and leaning on the system more than we have people contributing. And absolutely, someone needs to take leadership and drastically reverse this, because it's only going to get worse before it can get better.
Well, I'm going to just say what I wish Danielle Smith could say, but probably dare not, because people would just tell her she was trying to excuse something that wasn't very well performed. But the reforms that she has made in healthcare and in education would, I think, have met her objectives if our population was that 3 to 3.5 million that it was when she took office. But if you have another 1.5 million people piled in on top, of course you're going to find that all the improvements you've made in the way health is administered, the way education is done, are just going to be swallowed up by all the new people here. Do you think she's able to use that reasoning?
It's a tough one, because I know as she, gives a address to Albertans, and we'll talk about the significant influx of population that has crippled some of these systems. I mean, look at some of her policies. I think she's doing it indirectly, and I applaud it, where she has putting citizenship on license plates, aligning it with your health card, because there's more health card numbers or health numbers out there than there is population. And then that means to me that there's individuals abusing the system, or that there's administrative errors that we need to correct. Either way, it's a problem that needs to be addressed. And so by really understanding the impact of what immigration and emigration or migration has on our population is proof points that I think she could use. Right now, I think that as I sit here and say, yeah, we should prioritize Canadians for employment, we should prioritize Albertans first, we should look at giving our support services to people that are Canadian citizens over people that just moved here. In many circles, you get called a racist for that. It's almost like we forget that every color can be an immigrant. But that the left labels it as this is ignorance and tries to compare us or pit us similar to the US. And I think that unfortunately that's working. That makes it more difficult for Premier Smith to call a spade a spade.
I agree with you. Look, we're almost out of time. Last question. I noticed that in the press, we are still referring to this government led by Mr. Carney as a new government. Now, in actual fact, it's the same government, 10 years old, who's had a new leader for a year. But even if you say it's a new government, is it still a new government after only a year with Mr. Carney at the helm? How long before we make Mr. Carney accountable for what has happened on his watch or not happened?
Well, first off, that's all BS. You didn't see Danielle Smith getting that out and saying it was a new government. She had to wear everything that happened under the UCP from 2019 onwards. And so I say that that is a media spin by a party that funds you, and cough, cough, the CBC, driving a narrative that is completely unfair. A year when you have a minority government is like dog years, right? You've got to prove to keep things moving. And in our system, it's legislated that it must happen constitutionally by 5 years, likely by 4 for a federal election. Do we really leave training wheels on for 1/4 of someone's lifespan? No. So I think it's, since his first budget, I think the newbie card it should be eliminated. I also think that it should be even faster than that, given that everyone surrounding Mark Carney was part of the previous administration, with the exception of Guilbeault leaving and Trudeau, right? Chrystia Freeland is still getting job offers and finally removing herself. But like all the same actors were there. So I think it's a cop-out. I think that it's media spin to give the grace that maybe some of us that even will never agree with Mark Carney gave him, in hopes that he could fix Western alienation. But now I just think he courted Alberta in a way that he was never planning to make us go steady with them.
Very well. That's an excellent note to end on. Never meant to go steady with Alberta. We'll lead on that.
Maybe I'll write
Barootes-
an op-ed about it for you guys.
Yes. Yeah. Erika Barootes, always a good source on Alberta politics. Thank you for being with us. And for the Western Standard, I'm Nigel Hannaford.